Emergency responders are searching the icy waters of the Potomac River after that deadly midair collision over the Potomac. Here's what we know at this hour. All 67 people on both aircraft are feared dead.
Crews have not found any survivors. They have recovered at least 28 bodies, including 27 passengers from the plane and one from the helicopter. American figure skaters, coaches, and family members were on the passenger jet.
The 12th Aviation Battalion, which was on a training mission, has been grounded for 48 hours while the Army conducts this initial investigation.
Just before this newscast, President Donald Trump addressed the nation, calling the deadly crash a tragedy of terrible proportions.
Chris Levengood was watching those comments. And Chris, what else did the president have to say about this?
Well, Renee and Jeff, he talked about quite a few things, but I should mention right at the start, President Trump requested a moment of silence for the victims and their families, but essentially talked about how the search and rescue mission was underway all night, which now we know is a recovery mission. And he mentioned that the Coast Guard did a phenomenal job. But the president made it very clear this crash should not have happened.
We do not know what led to this crash, but we have some very strong opinions. You could have slowed down the helicopter substantially. You could have stopped the helicopter. You could have gone up. You could have gone down. You could have gone straight up, straight down. You could have turned. You could have done a million different maneuvers. For some reason, it just kept going.
Now, some of the strong opinions the president expressed seem to be targeting diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts of the FAA prior to his administration returning to the White House. He also notes that the position of air traffic controller is for someone who is, quote, brilliant, but noted how the FAA sought out diverse staff, including those with physical and mental disabilities. The president also appointed a new acting chief of the FAA, taking over effective immediately. Federal investigators are actually looking more into this right now. This obviously is such a tragic situation still unfolding at this very hour, Renee.
Chris, thank you. We asked Congresswoman Deborah Ross about the plane collision while she was attending an event this morning at Research Triangle Park.
It is tragic and so much unnecessary loss of human life. We are going to clearly investigate it. I know there have been some questions about what was going on with the helicopter, but we are just mourning this tragic loss, and our hearts and prayers are with the families of the people whose lives were tragically lost.
Other lawmakers from North Carolina's congressional delegation are also expressing sympathy for the families of the victims and promising a thorough investigation.
And here in the WRAL Live Center, we are also monitoring more reaction to that crash. I want to start with the First Lady, Melania Trump, saying, "My heart goes out to those impacted by last night's terrible tragedy. I pray for those who sadly lost their lives, their families and loved ones, and first responders who will work tirelessly through the night. May they find strength and solace in this difficult time." Another person, Secretary Sean Duffy, he says, "May God rest the souls on that plane and in the helicopter and comfort their grieving families." But just in the last maybe 5 minutes or so, we are now hearing from U.S. figure skating. They posted this to X saying they can confirm several members of the skating community were aboard American Airlines Flight 5342, which collided with a helicopter yesterday. These athletes, coaches, and family members were returning home from the National Development Camp held in conjunction with the U.S. Figure Skating Championships in Kansas. "We are devastated by this unspeakable tragedy. We will continue to monitor this situation and release more information as it becomes available."
First responders spent hours in the extremely frigid waters of the Potomac River. Within minutes after the crash, a stream of first responders converged on that scene. WRAL's Heidi Kirk spoke with people who witnessed that urgent response. Heidi.
Well, Jeff, I've got to mention, I've flown in and out of Ronald Reagan National Airport more times than I can count. And one of the best moments is when you fly over the Potomac River. It's absolutely beautiful. And now for so many of us that are connected to that city and beyond, that experience is going to be changed forever. Now, take a look at your screens. You're going to see some of that video that was captured last night and in the early hours of the morning as this played out. I spoke with a friend that lives in the DMV area watching all of this play out from her window, watching the first responders on scene swarming that area. She described it as extremely jarring. She said there was a moment that she found out what exactly had played out there. Listen to her describe it.
right outside the window, it was just like a sea of red lights. And just knowing why that was happening was awful. I mean, I was shuffling in bed, not able to sleep, but then there's also that guilty feeling of being warm in your bed while knowing that that's happening outside.
And of course, that's a feeling that so many of us are feeling this morning. Now, if you take a look at this board, we've been monitoring the flights coming out of Ronald Reagan National Airport. If you take a look right there, you'll see several of them are canceled, but the most recent one that I'm seeing pop up here is coming from Ronald Reagan in around 3:34 this afternoon. Of course, we're going to continue monitoring that board and bring you live updates from here at the airport all day long. Heidi Kirk, WRAL News, live at RDU.
Heidi, thank you. During a news conference this morning, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said the helicopter pilot was aware there was a plane in the area. Secretary Duffy also said there had not been a breakdown in communication between the two aircraft. Joining us to discuss what could have led to the midair collision is James Krause. He's an experienced lawyer who specializes in aircraft and helicopter disasters. James, good to have you on the program. Okay, so we know from D.C. officials and Secretary Duffy that it's far from unusual that military aircraft share airspace with passenger planes at Reagan. Walk us through what the protocol would be regarding helicopters and air traffic control.
The helicopter was on, appears to be what are published routes, legal routes, Route 1 coming from the northwest, joining with Route 4, which goes south right at National Airport. So it was on a published route, it was legal, it was where it was supposed to be. When he entered that route, when the pilot entered that route somewhere in the northwest, he would have had to contact the tower at National Airport. So the tower should have been aware of that helicopter for a reasonable amount of time before this collision occurred. The other thing that I find curious is why the runway 33 was being used, which crosses directly over helicopter Route 4. Normally at National Airport, runway 1 and 19 is used, which would have brought the airliner up the river, landing to the north, and it would not have interfered at all with the helicopter Route 1 and Route 4.
And James, this morning, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth confirmed the military crew did have night vision goggles and that it was a clear night. So weather not a factor. What could have prevented the pilots from seeing the other aircraft?
Well, I don't know what they saw and what they didn't see. I don't know what air traffic control issued. It's clear that air traffic control did not keep these aircraft separate, which is the primary responsibility of air traffic controllers. Air traffic controllers are understaffed, undertrained, and undersupervised and have been for years. So a clear night, it seems to me they would have had visual contact with both aircraft, and if they didn't have visual contact, they should have been clear on the aircraft, on the air traffic controllers' radar. But at any rate, these aircraft should have been kept separate, and they weren't kept separate. I understand that the helicopter received some warning of the presence of the airliner, but you can't issue warnings at the last minute in this sort of a environment.
A lot of takeaways here. And James, we appreciate you sharing your expertise. Aviation expert James Krause, thank you. We are staying on top of this story all day long on TV and online. Download the WRAL News app to get push alerts straight to your phone. It is free to download.
A lot of talk about the conditions weather-wise in that area, as well as the temperature of that cold water during the rescue and now recovery. Elizabeth Gardner in the WRAL Severe Weather Center with the pinpoint exact conditions when this happened.
And certainly when we have a crash like this, the first question is, was it weather related? And of course, it's been well established that there were clear skies. And of course, we double checked as well all the sensors in this area. It certainly looks like there were clear skies. You can see the airport here. The crash site was right here in the Potomac River, just off of the runway. anyway. The temperature at 9 o'clock, just about 10 minutes after the crash, 49 degrees. It was breezy. The wind was northwest at 16, gusting to 26, but it doesn't appear that the wind would have caused any of these issues that happened. Of course, the skies were clear. So the second thing is just how difficult it was for the rescue workers to be in that. I know this morning, the coldest temperature there was right around freezing, and that happened at around 7 or 8 o'clock this morning, of course, when they were working. Of course, they're still working diligently. There was ice in the river, not covering the river, but there were icy patches in the water, and the water temperature right now is 35 degrees. So definitely very difficult work for those folks overnight trying to rescue and recover. The next thing that happens is tonight we start to see this rain moving in, and so that also could hamper the recovery effort. We'll also see some of this rain, and we'll talk about when it arrives here coming up.
Michelle, thanks. We're going to take you back now out to the site of the deadly midair collision near our nation's capital. Everyone on board is feared dead. Search and recovery efforts are underway, mostly recovery now at this point. And according to the NTSB, neither black boxes has been recovered yet. A black box, a flight data recorder, recording information from the aircraft and its journey. We'll have another live update for you at the top of our 12:30 newscast.
2 Russian figure skating coaches with Massachusetts ties were among those on board that fated flight. According to the skating club of Boston, former world skating champions and coaches Evgenia Shishkova and Vadim Nava were on that flight. Their son was also on the trip, but he was booked on a different returning flight.
Skating is a very close and tight-knit community. These kids and their parents, they're here at our facility in Norwood 6, sometimes 7 days a week. It's a close, tight bond, and I think for all of us, we have lost family.
2 other club skaters were also on the flight when it crashed, along with their mothers.